Hi everybody. So before I jump into any of the processing, I'm just gonna hit some key points before I get started and actually go over those photos that I sent everybody to have loaded on their phones. However, I didn't actually get to that at the workshop. But basically, I'm trying to read my notes here that I have on my phone. Just let me find it quickly here. So, and I know most everybody out there knows that there are really just three ways to make adjustments with your exposure. They just call it the exposure triangle. It's just the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture you're going to use. And in night photography, the only reason I bring that up is in night photography, we are maxing our shutter speed out as far as we can for the stars. And we're also maxing our ISO essentially as high as we would want to go. So basically, the only thing we have left is the aperture, and that too we're maxing it out. So we're really limited with the night photography. We basically go as far as we can in just about all three areas. But then the 400 rule, that's the only other thing I want to point out, is make sure everybody understands the 400 rule. I think you do. Basically, if you're using a full frame camera, you just take whatever millimeter lens you're going to use to shoot the Milky Way. Say you're using a 20 millimeter, so you take 400 and divide it by 20, and you come up with 20. So 20 seconds is your goal or your exposure time to start with. If you want more light, just do the 500 rule. If you want even sharper stars, do the 300 rule. Just know that it's going to be darker and you're going to be pushing more in post-production. And so after that, I think I can just jump into, I should have had a nice little video playing for you, but I didn't. But I'm just going to jump into those images I sent. So you may recognize this one. So what this is this is my, wrong way. So what this is just a small cutout of a image that I shot probably earlier this summer. Regardless, this is one single image shot at probably 6400, and you can see all of the color noise, you can see how soft these rocks are, and I believe this was a sky shot. So I actually used the stars from this image, but for this, I'm just going to show the rocks. And so this is a 15 image stack using Starry Landscape Stacker, and every single image looked just like this one. And that's why you stack. And even watch the details in here, the edges of the rocks here. You went from this, and you can just see all the color noise running right down that edge. Let's see if we can see this in the other image. What is that? Oh, you can. So the two images I'm showing shift a little bit, but there it is right there, that rock, and this edge looks great. But that's it. That's why we're stacking. So we can shoot high ISO or ISO and still have our final image look like we shot it at a much lower ISO. Okay, so you'll recognize these three images, and this is the image I chose to be the sharpest. I'll just let you take a look at them. A, B. Mainly because the sharpness appears to be identical. In my opinion, you may think one is sharper in one area, but then if you look at the other one, you've got sharper areas in the other one. So we're going to call it a draw. But this one has significantly more large white noise spots. And what this is a single image, and again, it's just a cutout, small corner of a photo. This is ISO 1600. Let me think. I'm trying to recall how many seconds. I believe this would have been a 4-minute exposure. if I'm correct. Basically, this image here has the exact same exposure length, but what I've done is this image I used 16 images. So I used 16 30-second exposures. So I've got 4 minutes total light, but this image was stacked. This is one long image. And the stacked image came out cleaner. And this was shot at 12,800. So stacking a 12,800 image is actually going to be sharper and cleaner than your 1600 ISO. Again, another stacking example. And this is a single image. This is what each one of my single images looked like at ISO 12,800. Then you go ahead and stack it. And so if you take 12,800, cut it in half, it goes to 6,400, 3,200, and then 1,600, which is, this is the 1,600 equivalent. So anyway, that's why we stack. Cleaner, sharper. Let me close these out. So that is the image stacking. Then I'll go into focus stacking. I just need to open these images up. Let's see, let me just pop through them here. So this is a single image. This is how I used to shoot everything. Just one single image, and these are actually reduced. I actually downloaded these from Facebook on my phone. So I used to shoot everything a single image. I thought, this is as good as the foreground can get, because what do? You got to have the stars in focus. And now this is my focus stack. So we've got the stars in focus, and I believe I used 3 focal points. And although the color's identical, the image is just that much sharper. And then if we zoom in, this is the before and this is the after. And essentially we're doing the extra work just so we can print a large image. Again, if you're just going to post online, you can eliminate a lot of steps. So, and that's about it. And so now I'll get going on the processing, and I will give you a little outline so you can skip, jump, forward, backwards, just to see a little more or repeat something. Anyway, here we go. Thanks. Okay, getting started in Lightroom. So what I've done so far is I've just brought the images in, created a collection, and I've gone ahead and I've grouped each set. I've got the sky, then I've got the furthest foreground, middle, and then the nearest foreground. So I've got just 8 images for my sky. I had an issue on Friday night and I had to reshoot, and to save a little time I just shot 8. I figured that would be enough. And then I do have 6 for each foreground coming forward with, again, half the ISO. If we look at this one, we've got ISO 10,000 for 23 seconds. Then on my very first foreground shot, I dropped it to 5,075 seconds. So there's more light, which we want. And what I've done, before I'm going to export these, I selected the first image of each set, and I just I like to check them to make sure that they have a relatively similar white balance. It'll just help match everything up in post-production when we get started there. This one could be just a little bit off. And then the final image, and then back to the sky. Pretty close. It'll be close enough. And this one is actually, I actually turned the exposure up so I could compare apples to apples as I was going through here. So this is the difference you get by increasing your exposure and your time. So what I'll do is I'll just select my images. I will come up here to export, and right in here I'll just choose my folder. I haven't created it yet, but on my hard drive I will I'll create a folder just for the sky, and then one for each foreground set. Makes it a lot easier to pull it into Starry Landscape Stacker for me when you pre-organize like that. You don't have to try to put them all in one folder. It's just a good idea to separate them and keep it a little more organized. So I'll go ahead and do that, but that's all I'm doing here. I'm not adjusting the exposure, clarity, detail, nothing whatsoever. The only thing I do is bring them in here to organize. I will click remove chromatic aberration, which I should have clicked already, and I have I turned off the color noise. Right here, it has a preset of approximately 25, I think it is. You want to turn that off so that you're not throwing away color before you even begin working on your images. So Lightroom I really just use to organize, get them in there so I can find them later and come back and work on it in Lightroom if I choose to. So I'll go ahead and do that. When I get the folders ready, I'll show you what I've got going in Starry Landscape Stacker. I know some of you will be using the PC version, Sequitur or Sequator. Not sure how to pronounce it, I should probably look that up. But I do know the programs work a little bit differently. I do plan on eventually, soon, okay, so I've got all of the images exported. I've got the sky, and then I've got the 3 foreground focal points. And what you'll do is, for those of you using Starry Landscape Stacker, in Applications, you just need to open it up, and it's going to ask you which images you want. I need to quickly track them down. Oops, I believe that's the wrong one. And down at the bottom I should have all of my images pre-organized. And so I've got the sky images right here. All 8 of them. You guys will have 16, I believe. So right now it's just reading the images. We don't have any dark frames. There it says light frames. I won't be going over dark frames because that's not even a process I actually use, but it can be used for those of you who want to research it and figure out how you want to go about it. And so what Starry Landscaper's done is it has located what it thinks are the stars, and you can see it's found it's placed some red dots down here. It's probably some of that moss, real light moss growing on there. So I can select here, you can either add red dots or erase red dots. I generally don't add any red dots, I'll just go around it. It's real simple, you just got to erase away what you want, erase away what you don't want, and keep what you do want. Looks good. Fine sky. Simple as that. And now what it's done is it's calculated, but we're going to brush in. You want to make sure you get these corners, and down here it's not going to be as critical. But if you would like, you can brush it in as close as you would like to. I'll just bring it down to about here. I missed a spot there. Make sure you've got the corners, or what it'll do, if you're missing any little spot in here, it'll actually blur your stars. And that looks good, so we're going to align. You can either hit align with, but I just jump right down to align and save. And you can see right here, it tells you which image it's aligning to. Which I think is similar to the PC version. I haven't used it yet. But I do know, I've been told that you have to load a base, and then to that base everything will be aligned. And I'm assuming that the PC version also stacks the foreground, because I know Starry Landscape Stacker will do the sky and the foreground all in one shot for you. So I finish up here. My computer's not screaming fast, so looks like it's getting close to the end here. You should see it clean up. The background music for you. Hope I got that playing. So close. And there we go. So that is fully stacked. I can already see the noise is cleaned up. It's not. Yours should be a little bit cleaner. You've got twice as many images. And it did do the median stack. I don't save the mask because you do have the option. It would just save it separately for you. But now, once we finish that, I'll just hit save. And it's going to go back into the sky folder. So we'll just call it Sky Stack. Looks like I've got company. And we'll save that. Then you can just jump right back in here and you can go straight to open. And then just repeat the process. And I'll just start with, take your pick. I'll go with the far foreground first. Same thing. For every folder, just repeat the process. So it's going to open these 6 up. And it will align the stars and the foreground for you. But you really just have to, you can stack it here, or you can take it into Lightroom, Photoshop, and stack it that way. If anybody wants to know how to do that, they can contact me. It's something I would show rather than try to explain. And so here we've got a little more, we've got more light on the foreground. So we've just got a few more to erase. You can increase your size here. And we don't really need to worry about the sky at all with this, with these foreground steps, just as long as you get rid of the red dots here. Find the sky. Yeah, so what I was saying, if you're going to use Photoshop to try to stack your foregrounds, it's basically you just load all of your foreground shots into a layers all in one document, and then you convert it to a smart object and then do a median stack. Now we will just align and save. Now I didn't have to brush in the sky here because we're going to throw the sky away on all of these foregrounds. Okay, so this is just, I'm going to do a quick before and after on these images. So this is just a single tip. I'm zoomed in at 200%. Now there's a couple rocks here, and then this is a real dark shadow. And remember, these images have zero noise reduction, zero luminance noise. They're just raw images. And you'll see, and I'll point out, these blue and red dots is where a dark frame is supposed to be used to clean them up. Unfortunately, I haven't mastered that. I've made an attempt a couple times. It seems really simple, but it's had too much of an effect on my image. So I haven't been doing it yet. I've been cleaning those up in post-production. So anyway, this is a single raw, and now this next one is the stack. And you can see most of this noise right in here has been cleaned up. But what these are, as you can see, they're not moving, which means that's actually sensor noise. But all of the random color noise like through here, and even watch this crack here. There's another crack over here, but you wouldn't even know they were there until you go ahead and clean your noise out. And now you can see them much better. And now it's just a little bit of noise reduction. You can see a lot of those hot spots are gone, and this is still prior to color noise. So anyway, we'll bring that back. And that's the heat. That's your sensor heating up in multiple exposures. But you can see it's a significant difference. Hopefully you've got enough resolution on your screen you can see that. Color changed just a little bit because of the median stack. Okay, so now that I've finished all of my stacks in Starry Landscape Stacker, I can come into Photoshop. There we go. And rather than open each one separately and copy and paste them into one document, I've moved them all to one folder. So then you can go into Scripts, come down to Load Files into Stack, and it will ask you to browse. And I've already been to the folder, so here it is. Otherwise, find your folder. Just highlight them all, so I've got all three foregrounds and the sky. It'll load them. Yep, that's what I want in my document. I'm sure most of you already know exactly what I'm doing, but I'll just walk through it for those who may not be as familiar with Photoshop. So they're going to load in for us here. Just kick back, listen to that groovy background music. I'm assuming I got background music. That was my plan. One to go. So here we are. And I'm going to bring the closest foreground down to the bottom. Bring the sky up to the top. Yeah, so there we go. We got them in order. Close, middle, far, sky. Then the first thing I'll do is I just run through them, and you'll need to zoom in to get a good idea what's happening. So we'll just zoom in just so you get some good detail. Let me turn that sky off. Okay, so right now we turn off the sky and we can see doesn't look like anything's moving. So we've got good alignment. And now if you look right here, this is a sharp shadow because when we were shooting the sky we weren't swinging the light around. Now if you go to the very first, the foreground shot, you can see that's the same shadow, but that's how much it softened up. Just gives it a little more natural look. Because in theory, the stars, the sky is such a large light source that your shadows should really be soft unless you've got the moon out. That's my theory. So anyway, and then we'll go to the next one. We'll turn that off, and there you can see it's jumping. And you can, depending on the resolution of your screen, you can even see the detail changing because we're moving through the foregrounds. So we do have an alignment issue. That's probably focus, and it may not be the camera moving, but because when you focus, it actually reshapes the image to some degree, pulls it in or pulls it out when you focus. And when we get down to the last one, I don't see any, just the slightest movement. So now I've got them all turned back on, and then I hit Shift, and I've selected all layers and go to Edit, and just select Auto Align Layers. And I just leave it on Auto, and I hit OK. And it's going to go through and work its magic. It's going to analyze every pixel for me, so I don't have to do it myself. And it should take care of that for us. And it's always good to check your images. If you check your images and you have no movement whatsoever, you don't have to auto align layers. And I have had images that require no alignment, and sometimes they look better if you don't align them. Not very often. Usually Photoshop can make an improvement, but in some cases it looks better. So now we'll run through them again. Sky, turn that off, it looks good. Turn the next one off, that looks good. Next one looks good. So they all look good. This was a jump the first time, and now you can see we've got no jump. Now I'm going to zoom out. And I've already looked at this image really close. And what I'm going to do, now I'm going to hit fit screen so I don't have to mess with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull a marker down. So this is going to indicate this is the sky. That's where we want to brush the sky in. And now the far foreground. I almost didn't even need to take that shot. So we're just going to pull this much in. And you're going to have to look at your own image to determine where it goes. The middle foreground was the biggest shot. And this is going to be the closest foreground. And the only way I found it was we can turn the sky off because we don't need that one. But it's just real subtle. If you look down here, you'll see it clean up. It's a little tough. The closer you get, the harder it is to see almost. But you can see it's softer here than it is here. Now we can really see the difference, how soft it is here. And there, that's what we're doing. We're fine tuning the focus. And if we had closer objects, because often I'm a lot closer than I am to this rock here, and that's when it's most critical. If you're getting real close, if you love a close composition, you have to focus that, unless you want something blurry. The further away you are, the fewer shots you need. So now that I got it marked, what I'm going to do is I can turn these back on. And I'm going to grab this middle layer. And I always make one copy. That's just an extra shot, and I bring it down to the bottom. So this is just a copy. So we're just going to call this fill copy. So we know what we've got there, and that's always going to be on. Then we got the closest foreground. And here, if you hit Option on the Mac or Alt on the PC, you can get a black mask. You don't have to invert it. Just hold down Option each time you click it. So now I got a black mask on everything, so we're just seeing the closest foreground. Because I've got it marked out, all I need to do is grab a white brush. Well, not my logo brush. Let's get a different one. Let's try that. Just get it to the size you want. And I usually use, it's not super critical, but I don't use a hard brush. I'll use about 38% opacity. Make sure you're on the middle foreground. Command Z to undo. Also make sure you're on the mask. And all you're going to do is you're just going to brush it in. And because we know the focus is so close between these images, my brush was set for difference. So make sure your brush is set for normal. There you go. Brush it in just like that. Now you can see over here, and nice stripe on that one. Then go to your far foreground. You have to resize just a little bit. And we will actually. I'm going to remove that line just so I can get a better look at what I'm doing. Because the only thing that's critical on this one is the sky. There's hardly. This is all fog or smoke and fog. We're just gonna brush that in. Try to bring it right up to the water line. Make sure we got it. So that should be good. So we're bringing in. Did you see what I did there? Come on, where is it? The other option is to go to history. But what I did is what I just told you to make sure you were on your mask. I was on my image. I'll do that one more time. Simple as that. Brush it in. Now we got. Bring it up just a tiny bit. And we're gonna do the same thing with the sky. And because of the, let's see how slow my computer is. But because of the color difference, or the exposure change, you're gonna need to blend it over just a tiny bit. And then X will reverse your brush again. Let's get it a little bigger. So now black. Soften that up to we don't want to see it so much. Make sure we're all black. One more time. Going to brush that in relatively close. And then what else you can do is you can turn your opacity down. We'll drop that down to about 5%. We'll make our brush just a little bigger. Now we can smooth that out just a tiny bit. Just a little bit at a time. Very subtle. Waiting to see it. Making sure my computer's fast enough there. So just feather it in until it looks nice and smooth, and that's going to be it. So we will have to deal with this right here. That's just where the stars have moved. But we can deal with that a little bit later. Now, let me turn my fan on. I think I can hear my fan going. Now if you hit Shift, Option, Command E, it's going to give you a stamp layer. And this is what I do rather than crop the image. You can see we've got a little bit of cropping that could be done here. I just grab it and I select it. Let's try it again. I don't like the way it lights up in purple on me. Just grab it and then just do a content aware fill. I just prefer doing that rather than just tuck your brush or your selector right under it. Probably wouldn't need quite so much, so then you can hit your space bar, put it where you want it. And it's pretty touchy. We'll try that. Wait for your cursor to switch, and then just content aware fill this. I always prefer to keep the original dimensions of my image, and then just fine. Looks like the bottom turned out fine. Okay, moving on. Just quickly grab that. Come on. And content aware fill. So now we have the perfect 2:3 ratio, just like so. So now at this point, we have our image ready to start processing. We haven't even got to that point, but we'll just we'll zoom in here. And now there's a couple ways you can do this. I'll just take the clone stamp because people are not gonna pay that close attention to it, but I'll make another copy just in case I do something I don't like. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to clone stamp this light right here. I'm just going to, you got to make sure you line it up. I'm just going to move some of that light over. And the same thing here. Just take this, make sure you're lined up just right, and you remove. You just want to clean up what you got going on, and you don't have to do it at 100% opacity. Probably better off if I wasn't at 100, but I'm just going to quickly work through it. And then you're going to do the same thing here. Just grab your star. And put it back above it. And then all you gotta do is simply lasso where it was and fill that as well. And so there, now you've got your reflection realigned with your star. Just a little thing like that, you really need to clean that up, or it's gonna jump out at everybody who looks at it and want to know why it doesn't line up. And I can see it's not perfect. I can fix that a little bit later. But we're ready. We're gonna save it. Now we're gonna go process it. So I'll save and I'll Okay, so I'm going to try to speed things up just a little bit here. You know, when I'm talking and processing, things seem to slow down just a little bit. So what I've done is, this is the same image. I've just saved it and brought it into Lightroom. Just so I could do a little work in Lightroom. And then I'm going to bring us back to Photoshop again. So essentially, in Lightroom, I haven't done a lot, but I basically cleaned up the green, add a little contrast to the stars, and increase the foreground throughout here. You can still see there's tons of noise. We're going to get rid of that too. But anyway, we've just cleaned it up a little bit. But that smoke and the fog in the air, it was killing the color, it was killing the stars. Saturday night was definitely better because this is what I'm getting from Friday night. But yeah, that smoke and fog just killed the color. Um, I'm going to show an image that I shot in June in this exact, well, actually it's a different location, but it's close. And you'll see the difference what that smoke did to the color and to the sharpness of the stars. But anyway, this is what I've got in Lightroom. I could probably add a little contrast, do a little color noise, a little sharpening on top of this, but I'm going to save that for Photoshop. Let me run through. So what I've done is, after I brought it in like this, and then I brought it to this by, I cooled it down just a tiny bit. I threw a little magenta into it, brought the exposure up, highlights down, shadows up, which is pretty typical. I didn't do anything with the white or the black. Gave it just a little bit of vibrance. There's so little color in this image because of the weather conditions. But I did push the vibrance up just a little bit, and then down here I did play with the color. Now for this image I just did it right here by clicking on here, and then wherever you go in your photo it's going to grab that color, and I have it on, that's going to be saturation, or that's actually hue. So I'll come down here and I'll do the saturation just so you can see how that works. I know many of you already know how it goes. If I grab here, you can see I push that green up. Basically the way I have the image is I pulled that green just about all the way down and just brought it back up enough so it has an easy transition. I'm basically pulled all this color out to try to get it back to a more natural color. Adjusted the hue a little bit in the aquas, a little bit in the green, and then down here I brought up the luminance of the green and the aqua as well, and a little bit in the purple. Just kind of gives it a little more pop. Turning that luminance up actually seems to clean the color just a little bit. And here I have got the color noise reduction, and I did click this just for the heck of it. Probably don't need it, we've already done that in the previous images. But I'm at 52% to get that color noise out. And I'm usually generally pretty careful with this color noise, and I will click back and forth, turn it on, turn it off, make sure I'm not sucking too much color out. But that's all I've done. I did add a couple brushes. This is just a brush through the Milky Way. You can see how it's a little bit choppy. Oh, and this is why. Turn that off. So let's select that. There we go. And then this one here, just to clean up some of the green around here. In which case the auto mask worked very well. And that's all we're going to do here. I'm going to export this now, and then I'll meet you back in Photoshop. We'll try to finish this thing off. Alright, so I've got the image opened back up in Photoshop. It looks okay. The sky really took the color out of the sky, out of the foreground. It almost seems to have given it this nice, quite a green cast to it. But anyway, the first thing I'm going to deal with now that we're back in Lightroom, Photoshop that is I'm going to deal with this noise down here. So I'll just make a copy. And the way I had been doing my noise was in the Camera Raw filter, which is very similar to Lightroom. So we'll just get the detail, zoom in so you can get a look at it. So here's the noise, and I'm just gonna crank it up. I'll go all the way up to 50% just about. And you can see we've still got a lot of spots. Even if we go to 100%, we just can't get rid of these spots. And that's got to do with the heat out of our camera and the conditions. But looking at the image, you know, it looks okay, but you can really see how much detail that noise reduction is pulling out of there. And even at 100%, you know, it's a painted look, I guess, but even at 100%, yeah, we're just not doing a real good job on that noise. So I'm just going to cancel out of there. And what I've found is that in noise reduction in Photoshop, we have something called median. And that seems to do a much better job at 1 of removing the noise without removing so much detail. Quite a bit better. And you can see that the detail, it's virtually having no effect on it. And we do still have some big spots and some blue spots here and there. But overall, you know, we're at 100%. And it's a relatively large image. And now I'll just toggle back and forth quick so you can see it really is just cleaning it up without destroying the detail. And now after that we will go, I'm going to convert this to a smart object. I'm going to just do a quick form of sharpening before I pause the video and finish the edit. So we just go, it's under layer, convert to smart object. And the reason I'm going to do this is I'm going to do a sharpening with a high pass filter. You can do virtually the same thing in Camera Raw Filter by using your sharpening feature and then masking it to some degree so you don't affect the sky. I've just found that I do like the high pass filter. Let's see how much there. And Camera Raw. Actually, that's not where I want to go. It's in filter. Other, high pass. Let's see, so 23 is a little strong. That's kind of the way I do it. A lot of people, and whoever's familiar with it, it's pretty typical to, you know, not get carried away. But because it is a smart filter, I'm gonna let it go up a little higher. Not that much, but maybe something. And I'll just hit OK. And then we're going to want to change this blending mode to overlay. And now you can see. And even in the sky, you can just really see the stars open up. We are getting a little bit of, and we're actually pixelating here. But it's making the stars pop. And the amount of additional noise, I'm okay with it. In printing, a lot of that will clean itself up. we're still seeing a fair amount of noise there. That's the high pass filter. So I'm going to do a control, just making a stamp layer here. Let's just see if we run median. See if it can find anything. Just wait for it. We're gonna see if we like it. So I need to check the stars. Oh, it's so subtle. So subtle. That's what amazes me, is that it can have such a dramatic effect on the dark shadows. And it's so subtle on the stars. I think we're going to be good, because we already know the high pass filter brought those stars out. So that was the gain from the high pass, and that's what was taken away. So we have overall improvement. We'll call it good. And we can still do more to the sky, which we will. But now we're looking pretty good with the noise. It's not perfect, but it's not terrible. And before printing, I would come in and I would manually fix. It's a little time consuming. You can try different methods. You can use colors. You can select color range, try to hit them, and there's no red, so that could possibly work pretty good. Okay, so I did pause the video and I went ahead and I finished off the image as best I could with what we had to work with. Again, what I did is I opened up another image to kind of show you what really good conditions would look like, or conditions that we were basically expecting for Saturday night. But yeah, that smoke just acted as a big brown filter hanging over us, so to speak, just absorbing all of the color in the light before it could even reach the surface, what we were looking at here. So anyway, just moving on from that noise reduction, the next thing I did is I made a stamp layer, again with the Shift, Option, Command E, all at the same time, and it'll give you a flattened stamp layer to look at. And so this is it right here, and then what I did is I came up and I converted it to straight color. Now I don't know if you can even see the change. Let's see, I believe I worked on it in here. Very subtle. You can see this rock right here. It'll kind of go from a yellow. Basically, I was going around and I was removing some of the yellow. I don't know. Can you see that? Those are just the small changes I make. Could probably be skipped. But this is before. This is after. Not significant. Let me get back to fifth screen. Then the next layer, I went in and I worked on the tint. And there you can see, and I did push it a little too far. But basically I'm looking at it here, it looks green. So I went into the camera raw filter, which you'll find right up here, just camera raw filter. And essentially I adjusted the tint sliders. I did the tint right here. I believe I pushed it to the warm side, magenta side. And I brought the blue down a little bit. Obviously not that extreme, so I'll just cancel that. Then again, this is the after, this is the before. Much closer, a little magenta though. This says layer 1. So basically this is just if I turn it off, you won't really see it change, but it's basically another stamp layer so that I could attach this curve to it. And all I wanted to do is just push a little more contrast into the Milky Way. And I did mask it off. We'll look at the curve here. So that's all I did. If you take this tool right here, you can watch it move around. Over here you'll just see the eyedropper move around. So I basically selected one of the brightest areas I could find and then one of the darkest areas, and then I just gave it a slight curve, masked it off, and then brushed it back in. It's just hopefully I'm not boring some of you, and hopefully some of you are finding something to do here. Let's see. And it looks like I'm just using 43% of it. Looks like I did it on the fill slider. Generally I'll use the opacity above it there, but in this case it worked just the same. We'll just switch it around. There we are. Same thing. Next I did a little, supposed to be tint, not tink, but tint, and I also dodged and burned a little bit. Dodging and burning is a big thing. I wasn't able to do a lot of it on this image. But there you can see, I kind of brought it closer to a gray, and dodging and burning in this area. I dodged the highlights a little bit because usually you'll see this burning out, but it was so dim that it wasn't actually burning out on us. So I did bring it up a little bit. Brought up a little more detail in here with the dodging and burning. And then I did some additional noise reduction on it, and a little bit of highlights. I brought the highlights up just a touch. That's at 100%, 67%. And what I'll do is I'll zoom in. I know I've had multiple layers of noise reduction, but if you get in here you can see there's still a lot of blue dots going on around here, and you're not going to see that if you post it online. We're good, but if you want to get in and print it, that's the additional noise reduction. It just cleans up all those little spots, so if somebody wants to come in and really get close to the image on a larger print, they're not going to look at the little dots, and especially this, like the red ones are magenta, the ones down here, they'll really catch your eye. And there was a slight loss in detail, but overall I thought it looked good enough. If you don't like the amount of noise reduction on the rocks, and it was so subtle, like even if you watch the texture of this rock, so subtle. And to be honest, the added noise reduction, I think it kind of cleans it up a little bit. But if you want, you can come in, mask it, and you can sit and brush all your rocks back, at maybe 50%. But you can just brush it back. We'll take a look at that one. It's really up to you. There were enough spots on there. I'd probably leave it alone, otherwise you'll brush the spots back and then have to remove them again anyway. Okay, and that's all I did. I I called it. I called it on this one just because of the lack of light we had to work with and the color. But all those minor changes that may not seem like a lot from where we started from, or where we started from since we brought it back from Lightroom. But if you turn on the original layer again, it really is, you know, a relatively significant change. And again, I still don't like the color. This isn't going to be a print I'll be trying to sell, I know that. Unless I swap the sky, and even swapping the sky, we're still going to have that dull foreground. But yeah, so there's the base image out of Lightroom, which I seem to think was relatively good. And then we'll take a look at, so this next image, this is a single, just one single raw image that would have come out of camera. So this is basically, so we've gone a long way when you look at what we originally captured out of the camera. So we've gone from this to this. So when you really start looking at it, it's pretty significant. And that's just my opinion. I like it. So fit screen. Fit screen. Before, after, which is why we stack, which is why we do focus stacking. And now, this is what a good sky will look like. I essentially shot this with the same settings, same time of night, same dark sky, but with clear skies. And you can just see how much more color there is. We don't even have the core of the Milky Way. The core was actually hidden in the smoke. Or here we've got the core. It was shot, well, it would have been June. This is June, so you can see by the angle of the Milky Way it's earlier in the season. So I'll just do a quick run through on this one. So this is what this one looked like when I brought it out of Lightroom. Pretty good. I really don't recall how much I did in Lightroom on this one. I know you can do a better job in Lightroom than this. The first thing I did was whites and shadows. So I just brought the shadows up, whites down, and then I threw a dehaze on the sky. And it looks like I masked it in with about, if you can watch my masks over on this side, you can see that I'm only using the top half of the dehaze. You can see just the top. And then I threw a curve on it. And not a strong curve, but that's the curve I threw up there on the sky. You can tell by the mask I'm basically going around the island, just keeping it in the sky. So that's the curve adjustment. Then I did a little sharpening and noise, and you can tell by my mask I've got full sharpening and noise reduction on the foreground, and I cut it in about half for the sky. Let's zoom in so you can see it. Pretty subtle, but the sharpening really brought out some of the, like even this reflection up here, the sharpening will bring that up too. Let me fit screen. And the next one, it says water noise. And I believe I used, it says water noise with, let's see what it says. I believe I used surface blur is what I used. Yep, that looks like surface blur. I'll do the before. So you can see the noise in here. And I didn't use this trick on the other one, but if you actually go in and you use surface blur, you can adjust your slider and it'll just blur it. And you can see where I brushed it in. I could probably have brushed a little bit tighter in here. But that's just a surface blur. And then with my mask, I just brushed it in the water. Just brushing it over the water to smooth that out. Sky color shift. Warmed it up a little bit. That would have been in the Camera Raw filter. I would have just shifted the color. And now I've done a little clarity. Clarity through the sky and in the water. So there you can see that clarity really brings out the rocks underneath the surface of the water. Dodge and burn. So basically you find the highlights and you find the shadows and you just emphasize them a little bit. And when I do the dodge and burn, I will, if you're not real familiar with it, so I'll set it to burn, which will make it darker. And when I burn, I just want to burn the shadows. I just want to darken the darkest. And also when I do dodging, I'll set it to highlights. Dodging will make it lighter, so I just want to lighten the highlights. So that way you can get a good definition between the two by having it focus on one or the other. And next, sky highlights. What does that say? Let's see if I can slide it over and read it. Oh, highlights down, that's all it says. Sky highlights down. When it's turned off, you can see it's starting to get a little close to burning out in here. So I just brought the highlights down. And now this one's a color layer. So if I turn it off, let me zoom in. So in the corners, a lot of time you'll get a little, it get purple. It's getting purple because you push the shadows up so high. So then I just actually make a duplicate layer and I convert it to color only. Then I'll just go around and I'll click and I'll select colors that I like and I'll brush them in. If I like the color here, I'll click, brush it in here, and I just bounce around the image. Let's check and see what we got over here. So evidently I didn't like the orange of this rock. I didn't like the orange here. A little too orange here. So I'm not exactly sure where I would have clicked from, but you just click somewhere else in the image. Find the color you like. Brush it over. Especially here you can really see it. Kind of take the attention away from that wet shadow there. Looks like I've got an exposure adjustment coming up next. Quick video, right? Isn't this just a nice quick short video for you? Tell you what. Brought the exposure back, a couple spots there, used a sponge tool here. Now the sponge tool, it just helps bring up the color or down colors just by brushing on it. I didn't do a lot. We got, ooh, color sharpening, beautiful. So what this is it's just an action I created. It's called color sharpening. Kind of just adds a little bit of definition to the rocks, a little more contrast. But I seem to like it. I run that on a lot of my images. Another curves adjustment. You can take a look at it. I feel like I just brought everything up. And ooh, look at that, 5% opacity. So I'm guessing I ran auto on it and then brought it down. Sometimes I'll run an exposure actually brightness contrast or a curves adjustment, and I'll just hit auto just to see where it takes me, and then I'll tone it down or delete it altogether. And so this one, a little bit of dehaze in the sky. And then this one is final noise. There we go. Now here, let me turn it off first. And this again is the median noise, which is one of my favorite ways to get rid of noise. If you just watch this in here, hit median noise in your filters, and it hits it. It just cleans it up better than anything I've really found before and after. And it's entirely up to you if you want to brush your rocks back. Generally, I don't have to brush them back. And so that's the before and the after. And this is what a sky will look like. It should look like when you got great conditions, and a little less like this. But even so, we've gone quite a ways. So that's it. If you've got any questions, text me, message me, whatever you feel like, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Alrighty, thanks.